Welcome everybody to the Outdoor Sports Club channel. I want to talk about this KABAR Becker BK7 knife. I've had this for about a year now, and I've been using it a lot lately, the last few months, and so I thought it'd be a good time to just kind of give my thoughts on it. And I've got my my old cold steel Koboon here that I have not used in a long time, and I have not been taking good care of it. It's been sitting in its sheath for a few years, and we've got some signs here of neglect on the edge up here and on the back. So it just got me, messing with this knife got me to thinking about the old cold steel Koboon, and I thought I better get it out. Plus, we'll talk about this in a little bit. I got this ferrocerium rod from a coworker. He bought some and brought them in, and he brought in this little chunk of walnut to work one day, and it was kind of slow, so I shaped this walnut a little bit, brought it home, drilled a hole in it, epoxied the rod in it, and then finished the walnut. It looks kind of nice, it's kind of cool, but it doesn't strike very well with that. So at least I haven't gotten it to. I think it's the coating. So part of the reason I got out the cold steel was to strike with this and make sure that this worked pretty good and try to light a fire with it, which I did. So so anyway, let's talk about the Becker BK7. The reason I bought this was, and it was around 80 bucks with the sheath, which this is not the sheath. I bought this extra. We'll talk about that a little bit. But the reason I bought this was I wanted a campy knife, something I could take camping. And I don't do a lot of bushcraft stuff. I don't do a lot of backcountry hiking, but I do a little bit of hiking and I do a little bit of camping. And I wanted something heavy, a wide, thick knife, something with some weight to it, something with some blade length to it so that I could chop things and basically do what a knife can do and do kind of what a small hatchet could do. And if you want to do something that a small hatchet can do, you've got to be weighty. And so that's the reasons why I bought this knife. So before we talk about how it fit my needs or my desires there, I'll mention everything that I've done with it so far. Okay, so I have chopped vegetables with it, onions, carrots, peppers. Yeah, that's about it. I've cut meat with it and trimmed fat, separate out muscle groups from the meat. I like to separate out the muscle groups and so I can cut across the grain. I was making stew, and I like to cut the muscle groups apart because the grain lays different ways in each muscle group. And I like to cut across the grain of the meat so that it's more tender. I'm not a chef by any means, but that's just, I do that going way back. It's kind of the way my folks taught me to do it. It's probably common knowledge, I don't know. But anyway, I've done that. I have batoned wood with it. I have knocked off small limbs off of longer, bigger branches. I have chopped smallish limbs in two with it, and I've made shavings for tinder and like fire sticks or feather sticks, whatever you want to call them. I've made those with it. I think that's about all I've done with it so far. Something I'd like to try with it, but I haven't yet, is skinning a deer, gutting and skinning a deer. I don't think it's going to do exceedingly well at that because it's not really what it's built for, but I'd like to do it sometime just to see how it works out. So, all that being said, how did it do? Well, probably about like you'd guess. It's not great for the small stuff. It's pretty darn good for the big stuff because it's a big knife. This is a 7-inch blade knife. It's fairly weighty. The handle's pretty slick plastic. A lot of people will change these out. They've got these like micarta handles for them. A lot of people will change them out for that. Even though it's slick plastic, I've never had my hand slip in it. It fits my hand really well. I've got slightly larger than normal hands, I suppose. That's what I'm told a lot. So, I got big feet too. as they say. And I'm gonna set this aside so I don't accidentally cut myself with it while my hands are moving around. So as I've done the little things with this, I've been impressed with how well it did the little things, making feather sticks, making shavings, cutting meat, and trimming fat. That's something I usually want a slightly, a shorter knife, thinner knife this direction, even a thinner knife this direction, maybe even a knife with a tiny bit of flex to it. Yeah, I don't know that the flex really matters that much. I've never paid that much attention to it in the past, but I was impressed with how well this did for such a big knife. Now, chopping vegetables, I don't really care. The bigger the better, I guess. I don't want to be chopping vegetables with a splitting maul, but I don't know that the size of the knife really matters. And again, I'm not a chef and I'm not a knife guy, so I don't have an intricate knowledge or an intimate knowledge with knives. I know I tend to buy knives that look cool. Let me back up. I don't tend to buy knives that look cool, according to popular culture. I buy knives that I think look cool, but more importantly, knives that I think will do jobs that I have for them. I guess I own more knives than I thought I did as I started thinking about all the knives that I've gotten, but I've very rarely gone out and bought a knife because I'm not a knife guy. And I get a knife that can serve its purpose and I use it, and that's pretty much it. But anyway, so all that's to say that all I can report on is how it worked for me. So chopping vegetables, I don't care. Big surprise, it does a great job chopping vegetables. Very surprised that it could trim meat groups apart, or muscle groups apart, and trim fat. So I don't know what I'm doing with my hands here, but I didn't video it. So essentially, I would peel some fat over and slice and get the fat off of the meat. It didn't do as good as a smaller knife, but it did okay. Chopping branches, of course it does great. Batoning wood, it does amazing. I batoned a piece of hickory, it did great. A piece of cottonwood, just about any knife would do good. And I did a piece of pecan, and you'll see that in the video. It had a knot in it, and this got stuck halfway through, and I had to work the knife out, flip it around, and I went ahead and split the pecan. I'd like to get my hands on some walnut and see how it shaves and how it splits. But it does great. I even took some branches and kind of chopped them this way, and kind of like you would with a hatchet, and it does amazing at that. Maybe not so on bigger branches, but on medium-sized ones that you don't really want to bust, or it does great. You can make stakes pretty easily with this to drive into the ground. You can just this thing splits like nobody's business. So it does great at big knife stuff, not so great at little knife stuff, but it's a little bit surprising. One thing I did is I was cutting some peppers for some chili. And if this is the pepper, I didn't video this either, but I'd slice it lengthwise, and then I'd lay out one of the halves, and I'd kind of hold the membrane in the middle and fold down the edge of the pepper with this knife and just slice right under that membrane, spin it around, do the same thing. It did great at that. Again, I would have liked to have had a smaller knife, but I was just testing this out to see how it did it. Intricate, agile stuff. It did okay. So that's about it, really. I think that kind of wraps it up. So my impression is, for a camp knife or kind of a, working around the house knife, I love it. I think it's great. It's a little bit big and a little bit long for, say, a backpack or bushcrafty type knife. And especially if you don't mind having a smaller knife and a hatchet, then you don't really have a lot of use for this. If you wanted a bushcrafty type knife and a hatchet, but didn't want to carry both, this is a pretty good option. It doesn't do what a hatchet can do as well as a hatchet can do it, and it doesn't do what a smaller knife can do as well as a smaller knife can do it. Big surprise. It's pretty obvious, right? But it is a good kind of jack of all trades knife. It's just a little bit big for a lot of people's tastes. I like it. When I wear it on my hip with this, I'm aware of its presence. So it is a bit big for that kind of a thing, but it does pretty darn good. Honestly, I've been very impressed with it. I like the knife. I think it's a good knife. You just may not want it if weight and size is a concern for you. So now let's talk real briefly. That's all I want to say about the knife, I think. So this is not the original sheath, like I mentioned. I don't remember what company made this. There's their emblem. Oh, my screen's upside down. So I bought this off of Amazon. The original sheath that this comes in is not a very good sheath. It's a cloth or a nylon sheath. It works okay. I just don't like it. It does have webbing on it, so you can put it on your belt, or you could put it to use on molly webbing. It's not really molly webbing, I don't think. It doesn't seem like it anyway. The dimensions are kind of off, but it works with molly webbing. So I've got it on my molly seat back in my pickup. But I got this so that I could carry it around when I'm camping without having to unstrap the other sheath. Plus, I don't like the other sheath. I was going to talk about carrying a knife in your vehicle, but that's probably a subject for a different video, so I won't get into it right now. But the biggest complaint I have about this from the factory is the sheath. It's just not. I don't think it's a great sheath. It's okay, I guess. I shouldn't knock it too much. But the only reason I think it's okay is because of the webbing. Okay, so I think that is about it. I'll shut up now because I tend to ramble on, and I feel like this video is probably at its maximum length right now. So there we have it, the Becker BK7 made by KABAR. Thank you for watching, and you know, have safe camping and safe knife usage out there in the outdoors and indoors, chopping vegetables and whatnot. Go out there and keep your knives sharp and take better care of them than I've taken care of right there. Thanks for watching.